May 17, 1990, Agua Prieta, Mexico. The agents tear through a dusty ranch house, searching for something they know exists but cannot find. They tap walls, pry up floor tiles. One agent, frustrated and parched, steps outside and turns a water spigot. The house groans. Hydraulic pistons were beneath the floor. A pool table rises, revealing a shaft descending into darkness. Not a stash, but a 270 feet tunnel under the U.S. border with concrete walls. Lights, rail tracks, and 5-ton cocaine storage bays carved into the walls. Air conditioning keeps the product at 65 degrees. The mastermind, 33-year-old Joaquin Guzman. Not yet El Chapo. In 7 months, the tunnel moved 30 tons of cocaine, unseen by any border guard. The cartel murdered 14 workers to protect it. The U.S. filled the tunnel with concrete and declared victory. They had no idea they just witnessed a proof of concept. Since 1990, over 180 tunnels have been discovered. The longest ran nearly a mile, and not a single one was ever found by technology. Every tunnel was exposed by informants or luck. How did one tunnel force America to rethink its entire border? And why can't the most advanced nation on Earth see what's beneath its feet? Across the border in Douglas, Arizona, federal agents step into a cavernous warehouse owned by Camarena, large enough to park 6 semi-trucks. Near the back, they spot what looks like an ordinary drainage grate. When they pry it open, a gust of stale air hits their faces. Beneath the grate, a vertical shaft with a steel ladder descending 30 feet into the earth. One by one, agents climb down into a 270-foot tunnel, 5 feet high and 4 wide, with smooth, professionally poured concrete walls and an arched ceiling. An electric lighting system runs along the top, illuminating the passage in a stark fluorescent glow. Their boots echo on a smooth floor, smooth enough to support a set of rail tracks running down the center. A pulley cart sits on the rails, still loaded with bundles wrapped in plastic. Inside compartments carved into the tunnel walls, agents find recessed storage bays large enough to stash 5 tons of cocaine at a time. A pump hums softly somewhere in the darkness, keeping groundwater from flooding the passage. Overhead, a jury-rigged ventilation system pipes in fresh desert air through PVC tubes. The temperature underground hovers around 65 degrees, cool and controlled, perfect for preserving product. Federal officials later nicknamed it the James Bond Tunnel for its gadgets and secrecy. Nothing like it had been seen on the U.S.-Mexico border. Investigators realized the mastermind is a 33-year-old Joaquin Guzman Ora in 1990. He wasn't El Chapo yet. Among suppliers, he is El Rapido, because cocaine moves through tunnels almost immediately. In just 7 months of operation, this single tunnel fired an estimated 60,000 pounds of cocaine into the United States. 30 tons worth hundreds of millions on American streets, all without a single border guard laying eyes on it. The D shuts it down, filling the Arizona end with concrete and dynamiting the Mexican end. But the damage is done. The cartels have proven that if the surface is fortified, they can go subterranean. This was not a stunt. It was a proof of concept. The D learned that Guzman hired architect Felipe de Jesus Corona Rivera, who had designed secret passages in villas for the cartel. He supervised the tunnel's construction, including the hydraulic lift, electric carts, and precise alignment. The bust makes headlines worldwide. Guzman slips away. Investigators acting on a tip from arrested suspects later drive into the desert outside Agua Prieta. There, buried in a shallow grave, they find the bodies of 14 laborers who dug the tunnel. The cartel murdered its own workers to eliminate witnesses. These tunnels are not just high-tech smuggling routes. They are built on brutality and secrets kept at the cost of human lives. 2 years later, in 1992, Guzman's cartel buys a warehouse in Otay Mesa, California, and begins digging another super tunnel, even longer than the first. One agent who helped uncover it said it made the Douglas Tunnel look primitive. Each new tunnel the agents find is bigger, deeper, more sophisticated, an escalation, a subterranean arms race. By the end of the 1990s, law enforcement faces a knowing realization. For every tunnel they bust, there are probably more still undiscovered. And each time, the cartels learn from their mistakes. How do you find something buried 60 feet underground, invisible to the naked eye, in a tunnel that might stretch half a mile? And what if the cartels have already solved problems that American engineers haven't even identified yet? Ground-penetrating radar seems like the obvious solution. If you can find buried pipes and cables with it, why not tunnels? In theory, GPR devices send electromagnetic waves into the ground and detect disturbances in the echo. A tunnel should appear as a glaring void on the readout, unmistakable and actionable. In practice, it fails catastrophically. The soil along the border is a jumbled mess of rock layers, clay pockets, kish deposits, and sand. Around Otay Mesa, the new hot spot for tunnels, the soil is heterogeneous, full of natural geological clutter that shows up as endless fuzzy lines on radar scans. A shallow tunnel dug 10 feet down might register, but the cartels learned that lesson quickly and started digging deep. The James Bond tunnel ran 30 to 40 feet down. Newer ones push 60 to 70 feet underground, depths where radar signals scatter and die in the geological noise. Most GPR units can barely penetrate that far. And even when they do, the image is so cluttered, it's like finding a needle in a stack of other needles. One geophysicist who spent months analyzing border data admitted that all the fancy algorithms produce massive amounts of data and unacceptably high false alarm rates. The machines lit up at every tree root, boulder, and buried irrigation pipe and missed the actual tunnels. Anyway, seismic sensors seem promising. Listen for the vibrations of people digging. But the border is not a quiet library. It's nearly 2,000 meters of deserts, cities, highways, and factories. Trucks roar by. Jackhammers pound. Trains rattle the ground. In cities like Angali or Tijuana, a sensor would be bombarded with vibration noise around the clock. Out in the country, every passing semi or thunderstorm could trigger alerts. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. faced a similar problem with the Viet Cong's Hua Chai tunnels and ultimately sent human tunnel rats underground because technology couldn't find the enemy. Decades later, despite millions poured into research, nothing had fundamentally changed. By the early 2000s, Homeland Security tried electromagnetic scans, thermal imaging, robots, and microgravity sensors. The results were always the same, promising on paper, disappointing in practice. One frustrated official admitted that every tunnel ever discovered on the southern border had been found by informants, surveillance, or plain luck, not by any wonder gadget. The most advanced nation on Earth was blind underground. So the U.S. shifted tactics. In 2003, it formed the San Diego Tunnel Task Force, a multi-agency team whose sole job was to ferret out tunnels. But their primary tool wasn't high-tech. It was old-fashioned detective work. Agents knocked on warehouse doors in Otay Mesa, chatting up landlords. They planted informants in cartel circles. They watched for odd clues. Warehouses that never sold goods, dirt being hauled away in dump trucks, heavy construction equipment operating at odd hours. It was uphill work. The task force averaged only a couple of tunnel busts a year, usually nabbing low-level workers who knew little about the bigger operation. If you're finding this breakdown of cartel engineering, hit subscribe. There's a lot more coming that will change how you think about borders entirely. By the mid-2000s, Arizona set up a similar Ingles tunnel task force to tackle smuggling tunnels that tapped into the city's vast underground drainage canals. In Ingles alone, at least 100 tunnel outlets have been discovered, many just yards from official crossing points. The cartels were drilling into the sewer system to pop out on the U.S. side unseen. Meanwhile, the tunnels kept evolving. When agents raided one San Diego tunnel in 2010, they found engineering blueprints on site. The smugglers were drawing up plans for longer, more durable passages. Tunnels started featuring elevators to lower goods and people into shafts. Builders reinforced walls with wood and steel supports, turning narrow passages into robust underground highways. They installed some pumps to clear water, high-gauge electrical wiring, and vented air ducts for oxygen. One tunnel even had a phone line running through it, a literal hotline from one end to the other. The fundamental asymmetry of this conflict became undeniable. Defense has to cover everything. A fence only needs to find one gap. The U.S.-Mexico border stretches 1,954 miles. To stop tunnels, the U.S. would have to monitor every inch deep underground all the time. The cartels just need to succeed once one tunnel in one spot for long enough to make it worthwhile. With an estimated $40 billion drug market at stake each year, they can afford failure after failure. A single tunnel might cost $1 to $2 million to build. But if it moves even a few tons of product, it pays for itself many times over. The cartels can lose 10 tunnels to raids and still come out ahead with the 11th. Washington thought it had an answer. If you cannot perfectly detect the tunnels, make them irrelevant. Seal the border so tightly above ground that smugglers will not bother digging below. That logic had a fatal flaw, one the cartels had already anticipated. If the most advanced technology can't detect these tunnels, how can a border this vast and complex really be protected?
Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, the US threw everything at securing the surface of the southern border. In 1993, Operation Hold the Line flooded the El Paso sector with agents and floodlights. In 1994, Operation Gatekeeper erected walls and high-tech sensors near San Diego. In the 2000s, Billions extended fences and vehicle barriers, deployed drones, and expanded the Border Patrol to nearly 20,000 agents. It worked on its own terms. Illegal border crossings above ground plummeted. By 2015, annual Border Patrol apprehensions were 1/5 of what they had been in the mid-1980s. Politicians pointed to towering steel fences and proclaimed the border more secure than ever. But here is the dark irony. The more effective the US made its above-ground defenses, the more it guaranteed that serious smugglers would go underground. Every obstacle on the surface, more patrols, higher fences, thermal cameras increased the cost and risk of sneaking drugs through a checkpoint or across open desert. Eventually, it became cheaper and smarter for cartels to invest in tunneling. By hardening the traditional paths, the US essentially subsidized the cartel's tunnel strategy. The numbers are stark. Between 2007 and 2011, authorities found roughly 75 tunnels, more in 4 years than in the previous 2 decades combined. More than 70 cross-border tunnels were discovered from late 2008 to late 2011 alone. It was a tunnel-building boom, and nowhere was busier than Otay Mesa. The geology, there is a smuggler's dream. Clay-like soil that's firm enough to dig stable tunnels without immediate collapse, but soft enough to excavate by hand with basic tools. A few miles east or west, the ground turns to hard volcanic rock that would require expensive drilling equipment or loose sand that caves in without extensive shoring. But under Otay, the conditions are nearly perfect. Above ground, Otay Mesa is dotted with hundreds of unremarkable warehouses and trucking lots stretching across both sides of the border. Forklifts clatter across loading docks. 18-wheelers rumble in and out all day, carrying legitimate cargo. Electronics, produce, auto parts. Nobody bats an eye at a jackhammer or pallets of merchandise being moved at odd hours. The industrial noise provides cover. The constant truck traffic provides camouflage. Cartel operatives could purchase a warehouse on the Mexican side, another on the US side a few hundred yards away, and start digging in secret underneath both. If caught, they lost a warehouse and some equipment, a few $100,000. If they succeeded, they gained a hidden gateway capable of moving hundreds of millions in product directly into America's drug markets. In 2010, agents uncovered 2 major tunnels in Otay Mesa, just weeks apart, seizing a combined 50 tons of marijuana, one of the largest drug busts in US history. One tunnel ran 2,200 feet, with reinforced concrete walls, and a rail cart system ending in the kitchen of a Tijuana home. In 2011, another tunnel stretched 600 yards, over a third of a mile, complete with an elevator, wood-paneled floors, and electric rail cars. Its US exit was inside a produce warehouse hidden among crates of vegetables. Agents found 32 tons of marijuana stockpiled inside. These were not ad hoc smuggling capers. They were multi-million-dollar construction projects. A single super tunnel could take years to plan and dig, employing dozens of workers. Some laborers were volunteers lured by false promises, then threatened with death if they tried to quit. Others were skilled miners on cartel payrolls. One crew worked in shifts 12 hours a day for months, chewing through rock at 5 feet per day with pickaxes and shovels. They rigged improvised elevators to haul dirt by the ton, disposed of it in dump trucks disguised as construction haulers, and kept laser pointers strung down the passage to ensure they stayed on course. By 2012, US officials publicly admitted that the surge in border fencing and patrols had made smuggling so difficult topside that the smugglers' response has been to go underground. Tunnels were no longer an outlier. They were a pillar of the drug trade. Then came the push for the biggest border wall expansion in modern history, even as new 30-foot steel barriers rose above ground in 2019. Below ground, the cartels were finalizing their most audacious tunnel yet, one that would smash all previous records. How far can a tunnel actually go before physics, detection, or sheer logistics make it impossible?
Late 2019, Otay Mesa. US agents have been surveilling a particular warehouse for months, chasing the whispers of another tunnel. When they finally move in with a warrant, even the most veteran tunnel rats are stunned. The tape measure keeps going and going. In January 2020, the San Diego Tunnel Task Force announced the discovery of the longest, deepest, and most sophisticated smuggling tunnel ever known on the US-Mexico border. From a nondescript industrial building in Tijuana, a structure that looked like any other warehouse in the district, a passage ran north for 439 feet. That is 0.8 miles. 14 football fields placed end to end. It snaked beneath at least a dozen other warehouses, under a section of paved road, and through an open field before reaching its intended exit point inside a commercial lot in San Diego. The entry shaft in Tijuana featured a fully operational industrial elevator. Not a crude rope and pulley system, but an actual motorized lift capable of lowering heavy pallets of cargo. The shaft dropped 70 feet underground, the height of a 7-story building going straight down where the main passage began. The tunnel itself stood about 5.5 feet tall and 2 feet wide, enough for a person to walk upright and push a loaded cart alongside them without crouching. High-voltage electrical cables ran along the walls, powering overhead LED lights and heavy equipment at various stations throughout the passage. Ventilation tubing snaked along the ceiling for the entire length, ensuring steady airflow in the stifling depths where oxygen would otherwise run thin. An extensive rail and cart system stretched the entire distance, designed to whisk multi-ton loads of drugs on motorized trolleys that hummed through the darkness. A complex drainage system with multiple sump pumps prevented flooding from the groundwater that constantly seeped through the soil. This tunnel was not built for a single score. It was built to last years, maybe decades. Here's what should keep you awake. Agents only found it because of an informant tip. No sensor detected it. No patrol stumbled on it. If nobody had talked, that tunnel might still be quietly moving thousands of pounds of narcotics under the border. When they mapped the passage, agents noticed something telling. Near the terminus, an offshoot branch ended in a blind stub blocked by sandbags. The builders had changed plans project. Perhaps their original exit became unviable when a building was demolished or a security camera installed above. So they sealed it off and burrowed further, extending the tunnel another city block to find a better exit. They were improvising in real time underground, dynamically adapting their route to avoid detection. Within months of the 2020 mega tunnel bust, another tunnel was found in Otay Mesa, then another. The cycle continues. Every time authorities fill one tunnel with concrete, the cartel crews start on the next. Not one of the 180-plus tunnels unearthed since 1990 was ever found by fancy sensors or radar. Every single one was exposed by human intelligence, routine policing, or sheer chance. The longest tunnel ended just a few hundred feet short of its goal. If the tip-off had come a few weeks later, the tunnelers would have broken ground inside a U.S. warehouse and been open for business. What happens when plugging holes becomes a permanent job rather than a temporary solution? And what does it mean for border security when the cartels have 3 decades of experience outmaneuvering every countermeasure?
Federal law now explicitly bans the construction of illicit tunnels, threatening prison sentences of up to 20 years for anyone caught digging under the border, a penalty that did not exist before the tunnel boom forced Congress to act. Multi-agency tunnel task forces operate not just in San Diego and Nogales, but anywhere along the border where tunneling is geologically feasible. ICE has deployed specialized tunnel detection teams, sometimes called tunnel rats, in acknowledgement of their Vietnam-era predecessors, who train in claustrophobic underground scenarios and use portable robots, fiber optic cameras, and air quality sensors to probe suspected sites. After the 2020 supertunnel, Congress demanded new research into seismic sensor arrays and even experimental quantum gravity gradometers that might detect density variations in the Earth, indicating hollow spaces. The Department of Homeland Security has poured concrete into more than 100 tunnel shafts, spending millions to seal passages that cost the cartels a fraction of that to dig. The fundamental asymmetry persists and shows no sign of changing. The border stretches almost 2,000 miles across desert, mountain, and river terrain. The U.S. must monitor and defend all of it simultaneously. The cartels can focus on one carefully chosen spot at a time, picking the location with the best soil, the most cover, and the weakest surveillance. Time favors the smugglers. They can spend 2, 3, even 4 years quietly carving a tunnel, working in shifts around the clock, waiting for the perfect moment to surface in some unsuspecting storefront, basement, or warehouse. The U.S. can foil 99 tunnel attempts out of 100, and the single one that succeeds will funnel in enough contraband to render all those busts economically irrelevant. The human cost remains brutal. Those 14 tunnel laborers murdered in 1990 set a precedent. Many tunnel diggers today work under armed supervision, effectively modern indentured servants. Some who finish a tunnel are forced to start digging another. Others are never heard from again. When you walk through a busted tunnel's damp halls, you walk through a potential crime scene of human rights abuses. People coerced or killed to make this architecture possible. And the real engine behind it all is demand. As long as the U.S. appetite for cocaine, heroin, meth, and fentanyl remains massive, the suppliers will find a path. If not tunnels, then boats, ultralight planes, drones, or hidden car compartments. But tunnels hit a nerve because they feel like such a direct affront to sovereignty. A wall says, "Keep out." A tunnel replies, "We will come in under your nose." Every wall humanity has ever built has eventually been bypassed. The Great Wall of China was circumvented by bribery and new routes. Medieval castle walls were rendered obsolete by tunnels and gunpowder. The Maginot Line was flanked through the Ardennes forest. The U.S.-Mexico border is no different. The cartel tunnels are definitive proof that static defense is always temporary. 3 decades after agents peered down that first ladder in Douglas, Arizona, over 180 cross-border tunnels have been discovered. How many more operate undetected is anyone's guess. In 2022, agents in San Diego found yet another tunnel 6 football fields long with electricity and reinforced walls running from Tijuana into a commercial lot. Despite that stretch of border being one of the most heavily fortified by surface barriers, A new 30-foot tall steel border fence deterred crude go-for-hole tunnels. It was no match for a 6-story deep sophisticated passage. The cartels simply went deeper. The question is not how do we build a wall that cannot be defeated. It is whether defense can ever keep up with offense. The legacy of the 1990 James Bond tunnel is instructive and humbling. That tunnel did not just move drugs. It moved the goalposts. It inspired an entire subterranean industry. It was a challenge thrown at the feet of the American security apparatus. And decades later, the game of one-upmanship continues. The border is not a line. It is a volume. A three-dimensional space above and below ground where cat and mouse chase each other in the dark. America was forced to rethink what border security even means. It is no longer just fences and checkpoints. It is sensors, task forces, and informants. And even then, it is accepting that perfection is impossible. The cartels understood first that to win, you do not attack strength head-on. You find the flank, the weak point, or you dig under it. The most advanced technology and the biggest budgets cannot change the fundamental asymmetry. Defense has to be perfect everywhere. A fence only needs to succeed somewhere. The tunnels are here to stay. They are as permanent a part of the U.S.-Mexico border as the Rio Grande or the Sonoran Desert. They are the price of relentless demand meeting relentless supply. And in a dark way, they are a testament to human ingenuity, the lengths to which people will go to overcome obstacles, whether for survival or profit. 30-odd years ago, in that rec room in Agua Prieta, a simple twist of a faucet revealed a new front in an old war. Picture that pool table rising once more, dust falling from its edges, and the astonished faces of the agents who peered into the darkness below. That moment in 1990 exposed more than a single tunnel. It exposed the flaw in the very idea of an impregnable barrier. The longest tunnel ever found was nearly a mile long and took years to build. Yet, no wall or sensor stopped it. In the end, human insight and a bit of luck brought it to light. For the cartels, that is acceptable odds. They only need to be lucky once. Somewhere out there, even now, another crew is likely digging in silence, deep underground. The border wall stands tall in the sun. Far below, the earth is full of secrets. And those secrets are patiently, relentlessly inching northward. If you want to understand the man who made El Chapo fall and how a hacker took down the biggest drug empire ever, that story is waiting for you in the video.